Working on the 2014 Chevy Equinox with the 2.0 Ecotech. The motor had a recent rebuild, but the cam phasers were not replaced. Those were original, and so now it's starting up with some noises, and I want to verify the fault and then just see if replacing those corrects it. So upon start up, it usually makes a pretty rough rattle on cold. When it's warmed up, it's not so bad. The other issues it's having is when you just are at idle with the car in gear, it starts to really get sluggish and hesitate and want to die. But when it's in park and neutral, it seems to be fine. So we'll just do a cold start and see if we can hear anything. Yeah, it's real rough idle. It's jerking. You can feel the vehicle kicking a little bit. It's not as bad as it had been with the noise it was making. So I've got these OEM cam phasers through AC Delco. There's your part number, and then the numbers on there. So GM's got the same number, and then you can see if we align these the same, and then flip them over, and then the dowel pins are in the same location as well. So the intake and exhaust are the exact same part number that goes on there. I'm not going to do a complete walkthrough teardown. I'm just going to take all this crap off and get to where the timing chain is visible, and then my goal is to just leave everything connected, just take the tensioner out the back, and then remove the cam phasers while on here with the timing chain just held up, and then put them back in and mark them so it's not out of time. We'll see how that goes. Alright, so here's an update of where I'm at. There wasn't much that I took off, just the intake box, the air box, the box over here, excuse me, the valve cover, and then just the PCV line, unhook the cables for the spark plugs, and that's about it. Obviously took the wheel off. Down here on the crank, it's a 21 millimeter that you're going to rotate clockwise to get the top dead center. So what we're looking for on these intake and exhaust cams is that arrow pointing up there at around 1:30, 2 o'clock, and then over here at the 10 o'clock position, I think 10 and 2 is the numbers for it. And then I watch this as I turn the crank. It'll go up and down, and right now it's at the very top of before it starts to go back down. So this is really all I removed, right? This was in the way in the valve cover, ignition coils, valve cover, and there's the new ones. So now what I want to do is get off the timing chain tensioner, which is a 32 millimeter. I'm going to turn it out clockwise and release the tension on the timing chain, and we'll take this off. So I've got my 1/2-inch drive, but I've got an adjustable ratchet on it, and that makes it a whole lot easier to get back here and loosen that up. Alright, so before I back it all the way back out, since I'm not trying to reset the entire timing system, I just want to keep it where it's at. I'm going to mark this chain link with where the arrow is on the intake cam, and the same with the exhaust side, but it's got to be dead on. It can't be wrong. This is where I'm going to put the new ones at. That's right, ain't gonna mess nothing up. Now we'll finish taking out that tensioner. Alright, so here's the setup. The tensioner's out. Got a 24 millimeter wrench on the intake cam. It's an 18 millimeter for the cam bolt. So I'm just going to break it free, and then I've got my bungee held up. It's not too awful tight, but I want to make sure that chain doesn't fall down, so I can keep it up out of down there, which I don't think down there it can pile up because of the guide that's right there. But I just want to make sure that everything stays up. Okay, so as I was pulling the exhaust side off, I just had to pull my wrench a little bit forward to give it some slack off of the chain, and then that just popped right off. And I'm gonna do the same with the other side. Okay, so check this out. I just put in the phaser right there where the arrow is on the dot, and then I just lined it up with its dowel pin and sunk it into place. I'll do the same thing with the back side. Okay, so I started to slide this one on. I've got the marks lined up with my paint mark, and this one wouldn't quite go all the way on the cam, so I rolled this one back just a little bit to give it some slack on the chain to get this one put back, and then you have to roll this one forward about, I don't know, 40 degrees or something to that effect to get the pin to line up with the cam. Okay, so you're going to finger tighten your cam bolts back in, and then make sure that your chain is on top of the guide, that it's not sitting out in front of it. All right, now the hardest part of this job is actually getting this tensioner reset. For whatever reason, this one's very difficult on this particular model, whatever, to get off. So I'm gonna reset that and come back. All right, tensioner's reset. I'm gonna put it back in the back of the block, and then we're gonna torque up the phasers. Quick note on this. So ideally, on the back of that guide down there, there's a little groove that this needs to ride in. So when you put this in, do your best to make sure it's staying in this path. And when you get it lined up in there, just double check through the guide to make sure it's lined up, or maybe with a mirror. So it says in here, timing chain tensioner, 75 Newton meters or 55 foot-pound. Okay. Camshaft. There we go. Camshaft exhaust position actuator first pass 30 Newton meters or 22 foot-pounds, and then final pass 100 degrees. And the same thing with the intake. So set your torque wrench 22 foot-pounds and then do 100 degrees. I like to mark the bolts so I have a place to start to make sure I've gone 100 degrees. And it looks like that one, yeah, it's right there. All right, so I went ahead and marked right about 100 degrees so I could more easily see my alignment marks. And I'm just going to use my big old 1/2-inch drive with 18 on it and hold the 24 mil right there on the cam. We're supposed to be held at. Okay, now it's time to set the timing chain tensioner. So I've got this. The hell is this? Oh, it's for the timing, or for the serpentine belt pulley, but it's got a rubber end on it. So I'm gonna take it, set it down here, just on the timing chain, back where the tensioner goes, and then I'm gonna use my the 2-pound orange mallet, and it's gonna give it a good little jolt, and that'll set the tensioner. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and roll the motor over. I got the timing chain guide put back on, the upper guide, the tensioner's in, it's tension on the belt, but I always roll it over by hand first before I go any farther to make sure nothing is off. Obviously the links aren't going to line back up after you rotate it, but you want to make sure that nothing feels weird as you roll it over. Always go clockwise. It's almost a full rotation. I'm actually a little concerned about that tension on that chain. Let me double check that. Alright, I'm using my mallet down here and just make sure we've got, yeah, there's spring pressure on that. Okay, so I'm gonna be sure. All right, I'm gonna put cylinder 1 spark plug back in. It's a 5/8 socket for the spark plugs. I always put little anti-seize on them just to make them easier coming back out. And if you want to know, it's 15 foot-pounds on the spark plug. All right, so the valve cover goes back on. Make sure everything is set in its spot, and then finger tighten all of the bolts in first before you decide to use your power drill or whatever to do the rest of them. So they call it a cam cover to cylinder head bolt. That's 89 inch-pounds, which isn't much. You know, so just start in the middle and work your way back and forth and around. There we go. Yeah, it's not much. Alright, next up's the ignition coils. Always put them back where they came from. In case there's any other issues, you know that you didn't swap these around. And then you're trying to figure out which one went where last time. So I'm just putting these 4 in. And if you want to know on the ignition coil bolts, 89 inch-pounds. Alright, then we'll just plug in all of our connectors, clips, etc. Make sure you close your locking tabs. And then these guys may pretty much fall into place, but they do have their own individual shapes for the connectors, so you really can't mess them up as long as you left them in the right spot. And that one's messed up. It doesn't click into place, but that one does. So what I'll do is I'll put on electrical tape and then I'll zip tie it to make sure this one doesn't go anywhere. Alright, so over here we're gonna run the PCV line back through. Let's see. Runs down here. That's on a swivel. It's got this bolt here. Really long bolt for some reason. Alright, and then we've got that. It just pushes down, and then the wiring harness connects onto that, and then we'll finish tightening that up. And then over here on this side, over here, this just snaps into place and you put it back in there. Alright, and then back here there's a 10mm bolt. It's got a bracket for the fuel line that I undid that comes from the valve cover. Just sinks right back in there. And tighten her down. Next thing to go in is the air box. See right in there. Let's try it again. Slide right inside that pipe, and then that's a little messy here. A little plug. Make sure the wiring harness is out of the way. And then you've got 2 10mm bolts that just screw down in there. Alright, we've got 3 pieces left. We've got the engine cover, you got the intake air box, and you got this vacuum line. This needs to go on before this. Just don't forget that. So before you completely set this down, while you've got access to this hose, you may want to put that in before it's completely locked down, just for ease of access if you need to wiggle something. Alright, then the last thing will be the air box. lined up back there. Those little knobby guys. And then down here in the throttle body, you can see it there. It's just going to sit down right on top of that. Yep, then we'll tighten it down. Make sure everything is on this one. This one's got kind of a funky connection. Got to really give it a few wiggles to get it set in there. Make sure mass airflow sensor connector's back in. Yep, don't forget to plug this in. And then tighten down your two terminals for your air take-in box. Okay, it's time to start it. We're going to pass or fail together. Alright, it's been running for about 5 minutes now, so we'll give it some gas. Okay, and we'll disregard the service StabiliTrak for now. Well, it's not being herky-jerky. Well, it's definitely a lot better. I really need to take it on a road test. Alright, let's turn it off. And then let's turn it back on. See if we have anything different happen. That was smooth. And StabiliTrak's off. So, yeah, no. Make sure nothing's going to explode. Alright, so really the biggest thing I wanted to accomplish was to verify if in fact you could replace the cam phasers without having to completely reset timing, take the cover off, all the crap that goes with it. And yes, in fact you can if you're super careful. Also, it seems to have fixed the idling issue that it was having. But you know what? That makes me think. I need to go back in gear and do that. Yeah, because part of the problem was when it was in gear, not when it was in park or neutral. It was a geared related item, assuming that it had issues with the cam phasers not functioning correctly. Neutral, drive. Neutral, reverse. Yeah, it's not bucking. I mean, it's boring to watch, but the big thing is, do we have resolution? So I'm going to end the video here. That's really what I wanted to figure out. I'll put some comments down below if something changes when I've been able to give it a test drive. I hope it helped you out. Thanks for watching.